searching for answers to try to prove you're right.
Okay, it's a new day. I got the locker prepped, the bearing caps where they need to be, positioned properly. And if you look in here, you'll see a matchstick that I cut. Basically, I pulled that little plunger switch out, tied some fishing line to it, and that just drapes through there. So just like when I did the front locker, when I changed the inner axle seals, it's the same procedure basically to carefully lift the carrier up with the shims and the races over the bearings and place her in there properly and get those bearing caps on and get them started finger tight. So that's what I'm about to do right now. And then I've got the new plug right there for the solenoid wires, brand new. I'm going to put a little silicone on that too when the wires go through. And this is 18 millimeter head bolts. And I'm going to first torque everything in a crisscross pattern to 40 foot-pounds. Then I'm going to double it to 80 and bring it to 80. So that's where I am right now. Okay, the carrier is in. The bearing caps are very, very lightly threaded in there, the bolts, 19 millimeter head. And just, verifying that I have the proper orientation. Looks pretty good. The solenoid wires, you can see them right there. They go up off to the right and through the hole in the housing where the plug goes. So far it seems pretty good. Pounds for now. Also, you can see it looks like a letter Z. It's sideways right here. The bearing cap matches right here, and over on this side, it's vertical up and down, and the bearing cap matches that. And then the only other thing that I got to take note of is making sure that this little piece, this little retainer right here for the solenoid, it's a very soft piece of metal. When I took this apart, it was actually kind of twisted from when they torqued it. It twisted into position, and then when I took it out, it kind of came back the other way, but I just gently bent it into position. But it looks pretty good. So we'll do some torquing now. Now I want to pull this string out of the fishing line. Okay. So there's the fishing line, and I can almost see, I believe that plunger switch is on the ring. So now I want to torque this to 80 foot-pounds. I got the 40 foot-pounds, no problem, but now to get 80, I want to have that thing nice and secure. So that's what we're at. 80 foot-pounds set on the torque wrench, and we begin. Okay, double checked. I got a great 80 foot-pounds on the carrier. Solenoid wires are going through where they need to be. And then I paid special attention to this little keeper right here. Making sure and looking at some of my pictures from before when I took it apart, making sure that that little tit right there goes in far enough. So that just is like a little retainer for the solenoid. See how that moves back and forth just a little, but it can't go any farther than that, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, you can see right there the plug, and it'll be a little tricky now because of the truss, but you can see the bolt hole in there, and I'm going to plug that plug in. Then I got to catch that bolt, and I'm going to put a little bit of silicone on it and get that thing inserted. Okay, I plugged the connector in, and now it'll spin. See how this is aiming down at the 6 o'clock right here? That's going to spin up to the 12 o'clock. And you can see a little O-ring right there. I'm just going to put a little bit of silicone around that and get it placed in. Okay, you can see that the plug is in. And with the truss, you can also see it's going to be a little challenging, but rather than plug it in and deal with it and try to install it at once, I am going to get this thing installed. And obviously I'm going to have a hard time, but who knows? Maybe I'll have to open this up a little more to access that plug. It's kind of tight. I'm going to have to sneak that harness in there. So I might have to open this up a little. I'm not sure. But for now I want to get that bolted up. Greasing up the splines. All right, here we go. That was kind of a pain in the neck. All right. The retaining plate bolts are sticking through. 40 foot-pounds and a shitty ratchet strap from Harbor Freight. Goes. Pushing that backing plate in. There we go. I got enough now where I can get the nut started. Okay, I'm looking at the driver's side, and what I have here is the ABS sensor. So I cleaned this up nice with brake cleaner, and that's going to be going through here like this. Okay, that gets into position like that, and then I'm going to put some blue Loctite on that bolt and snug that up right there. And then we'll be doing the same thing on the passenger. Just so you can see see the little tone ring right in here where my finger is that it rides on. It's about 1/8 of an inch off of that, and it just sits in that position right there. So everything's nice and clean, and I just thought it would be good to get a look at that, how that goes through. And obviously you don't want to, just going to go snug, that's all, nothing crazy. And I'm using a 5/16 socket on this right here. Just work that in there, kind of finds its home, and then that bolt will seal it up nicely. Same thing, 5/16 head bolt right there. Gonna put a little blue Loctite on that. ABS sensor. All right, this is the back side of the truss. I ended up taking a cutting wheel and making an opening here because it's taped up right now because I repainted it. But right here is the locker and gauge plug. So I wanted to be able to get my finger in there and plug that in. So I think it was a good move to do it now. But it's 3/16 steel. It was kind of hard to cut, and obviously I had to be real careful of the wires and whatnot. But I think it came out pretty good, and I think now I'll be able to get in there relatively easy and get that plug. Just another look at the plug that engages the locker up at the top. That's in nice, and you can see the opening. I decided to cut an opening so that I have more room to get the wire harness and the other piece of the plug that mates with that. So I think it was a good move to do it now because there's very little room underneath the Jeep. Kind of a pain in the ass and a little disappointing that Synergy doesn't have that open enough, because you can see it's a 90-degree connector running parallel with the axle tube towards the passenger side, and that thing came straight down. So you had little to no room whatsoever to bend those wires or even get that plug in there. So anyway, that ought to take care of that. But I did lose about an hour and 15 minutes cutting that 3/16 steel and grinding it and making it nice and smooth. So that brings us to over here. So we have the lube locker right there. It's a great gasket. I've used this repeatedly. Same as the front. It's so nice to be able to take the armored cover off and be able to just reuse this gasket. After the initial time you do it and you scrape off all the silicone and get it out of all the threads, this is a really good way to go with the lube locker. So you can see I've got my 5/16 head bolts right there, and the other bolts for the bottom are for the rock glider. Getting my 5/16 tap and cleaning out these threads. I think I had some red Loctite in there. I was struggling a little bit getting the bolts in. So I just started kind of putting these bolts on, and then the bottom 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the side, those are for the fingers of the rock glider. The rock glider comes with some 5/16 bolts by 1 inch. And if you do a nice star pattern and compress this diff cover down onto the gasket, the bolts will be long enough. And the directions, they used to say 30 foot-pounds. I've been running these Rancho rock gliders and their armored diff covers for a long time now, but happily they've got it at 20 foot-pounds. So I was able to get 20 foot-pounds on these bolts all the way around, compress this thing nice, and then the same thing for the U-bolt. So the U-bolt goes just behind the pinion right here, and it uses nylon nuts, and it's pretty good. I will be installing this into the quart, into the quart bottles that I have of gear oil, and then pumping them right into the filler hole. And then I'm also going to get an Allen wrench and open this up right here. This tells you when it's full, but it really is dead nuts, and it usually oozes out of there right at the 2 quart, 11 ounces for the rear diff. Handy. All right, pretty good day today. So the axle is in really good shape now. Both axle shafts are in. The locker went in today. The lube locker gasket, armored diff cover, brand new Rancho rock glider. Had I been wearing that on this differential a month ago, there would have been no way those boulders would have punctured this differential. But she's on there now and looking good. I was able to torque all these bolts in a nice crisscross pattern to 20 foot-pounds on the armored diff cover. Then added 2 quarts, 11 ounces of Mopar 8090 oil. And I was turning the pinion. Sounds okay. I mean, you do these things, you do them to the best of your ability. And I'm not an expert, so I think you always have a certain amount of anxiety. But did everything to the best of my ability and hoping that everything's going to be great. E-brakes. I wanted to come over here. There's the patch. 1/2 inch, maybe even 5/8 of an inch. So that's nice to see. Plenty of room there.